all this Prime Minister can do is blame others for the exorbitant inflation that he has imposed on Canadians' food bills. He promised a month ago that by Thanksgiving Day, food would be affordable. Yet since that time, the CEO of the food bank says that now we have more Canadians than ever relying on assistance just to eat. And a poll out just today shows that 2/3 of Canadians are actually afraid for their health because they can't buy nutritious food after 8 years of this Prime Minister. So will he keep his promise, yes or no, to deliver an affordable Thanksgiving dinner to Canadians?
Mr. Speaker, we see that the Leader of the Opposition is always ready to play political games, because a few weeks ago we moved
Is politics, dummy?
Housing
What are you talking about?
Groceries Act, which will help build more rental homes and increase competition, including amongst the largest groceries. But instead of working with us to move this forward before Thanksgiving, the Conservative opposition chose to obstruct debate around these measures. We're going to continue to stay focused on helping Canadians while they stay focused on playing political partisan games.
Once again, I would ask people to kindly refrain from talking so that the Speaker can hear the answers from the government benches. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, the Prime Minister can pass any bill he wants any time he wants because he has a majority in coalition with the NDP. That's why he promised a month ago that he would make food affordable by Thanksgiving. Big blustery photo op. So my question for him is, will, by this Monday at Thanksgiving, he reverse the 22% inflation in the price of peas, the 33% inflation in the price of green salads, the 37% price inflation in the cost of frozen turkeys, and the 74% price inflation for potatoes? Will he keep his word? Will he bring the prices down? Yes or no?
Please have mercy, man. Thanksgiving is supposed to be a time to celebrate.
Mr. Speaker, we see again the Conservative opposition is always ready to fling attacks and make criticisms, but what they actually did was block our move forward on a Affordable Housing and Groceries Act. They obstructed debate last week in terms of delaying it. We want to move forward on this so we can help Canadians, but they stood against this act the same way they stood against $10 a day childcare, the same way they stand against the Canada Child Benefit, the same way they stood against dental care for Canadians who need it. Mr. Speaker, we will keep helping people.
Prime Minister pretends that he's not in a majority coalition with the NDP, when in fact he is, and he can pass any law he wants at any time.
Yeah.
And that's why he promised a month ago that we'd have an affordable Thanksgiving. I know it was a ridiculous promise. I hate to have to hold him to something so absurd after he caused prices to rise so quickly. But it was his promise. So, will he reverse the food price inflation he caused by Monday so that Canadians can have an affordable turkey dinner? Yes.
Yo, we need it done today because turkeys are all sold out. Like, what do you mean?
Mr. Speaker, times are difficult for Canadians right across the country, as they are difficult for people around the world. The war in Ukraine, the global inflation crisis, the after effects of the pandemic have all caused real challenges. And that's why, as a government, we've been there to support people, whether it's with the grocery support, whether it's now with the Affordable Housing and Competition and Groceries Act. Now, the problem is, Mr. Speaker, is the Conservatives chose to obstruct debate on that act, to delay it, and we call on them to help us move forward on this to make sure that Thanksgiving and future Thanksgivings are more affordable for Canadians.
After 8 years of excuses and inflationary debt and taxes, food prices and mortgage prices are raging out of control. In fact, mortgage payments are up 150%. When the government borrows money, competes with Canadians for their mortgage rates, it drives up the cost of lending. So will the Prime Minister tell Canadians how much will his government borrow this year? How much?
We would love to know that.
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, on the one hand, Conservatives continue to call for cuts to spending and cuts to supports for Canadians, but at the same time, they say there's not enough access to housing. And they put forward a plan, a private member's bill, to tackle the problem of housing affordability. The problem is it won't build homes fast enough, it doesn't reach enough cities, and it creates unnecessary bureaucracy, Mr. Speaker, while cutting the Accelerator Fund and ripping up our agreements to build more homes with cities like London and others across the country. On this side, we're actually linking public transit dollars to housing density, working with cities to ensure their housing proposals are ambitious, and addressing the bureaucracies to slow.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the question was how much? You see, when the government borrows billions of dollars out of the economy, it bids up interest rates. Those interest rates have already ballooned faster under this Prime Minister than under any other in monetary history. So once again, how much, and how much will this government borrow from the economy this year? Just the number, please.
Simple question.
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to talk down Canadians and talk down the Canadian economy, we're going to continue.
This guy is smoked something before going into the House.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, our strong fiscal position. We have the lowest deficit in the G7. We have the best debt to GDP ratio in the G7. And we're one of the 3 largest countries in the world with a AAA
credit rating. Of course.
Mr. Speaker,
it's always brought up.
We have been there for Canadians, and we have been responsible stewards of the public purse, and that means we will continue to be able to support Canadians through these difficult times, including with the measures we have right now.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The bond agencies he brags about were the same ones who were charged because they falsely claimed the subprime crisis would never happen in the United States of America. Canadian households, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, are more indebted than any other country in the entire G7. And interest rates have gone up faster than at any time in monetary history after 8 years of this Prime Minister. All of this is driven by his massive addiction to borrowing.
Yes.
So the average barber or waitress knows how much they borrow. Does the Prime Minister, who's the head of a $500 billion government, even know how much he's borrowing out of the country this year?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, we see once again the Leader of the Opposition's tried and true tactics of attacking the facts when they don't suit his purposes. Mr. Speaker, the international bond rating agencies like Moody's and S&P that have ranked the top economies as AAA economies, the United States, Germany, and then Canada in the world's largest economies, have said that our fiscal plan is sustainable. As we are there to support Canadians, as we demonstrate fiscal prudence, as we support Canadians through this difficult time. Now, he can wage war on experts and the facts and demonize them all he likes, but we will keep being there for Canadians grounded in the facts.
It's not sustainable, though.
L'honorable.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Even tell us the facts.
That's right.
Because he doesn't even know the facts. This is a man who is going to borrow $421 billion this year. If the government bought 421 billion apples, the price of apples would go up. When they borrow $421 billion, the price of debt goes up in higher interest rates. That's why Canadians are paying 150% more on their mortgages. How much,
Wow.
how much will this government force Canadians to spend on national debt interest this year?
Here, here.
See, he breaks it down so well for people.
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
I know Canadians won't be taking any condescending economics lessons from the Leader of the Opposition.
It's not condescending, it's factual, dum-dum.
Canadians that a good way of avoiding inflation was
Is crypto?
Crypto. That was his economic counsel to Canadians.
That's all he's got.
They would have lost almost half of their life savings. Mr. Speaker, you can understand we won't be taking any economics lessons from that guy.
Oh, he feels so tough off of that. It's so... Ellen chat for Trudeau. That was so pathetic.
Colleagues, I know that we are caught up with the passion of the debate. I ask you to always direct your comments through the chair and also...
Speaker, sit down.
Disruptive to the House. The honourable member...
The adults are talking.
The official opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that Prime Minister should be taking economics lessons from everyone. Everyone. This is a guy who said budgets balance themselves right before he doubled.
Yeah.
This is a guy who said he doesn't think about monetary policy right before he led interest rates to rise faster than at any time in Canadian history. This is a guy who, up until I told him, didn't even know how much he was borrowing out of the Canadian economy. This is a guy who's doubled the rent, doubled mortgage payments, and doubled the needed down payment. Mr. Speaker, it's about time he took some lessons. Why doesn't he go to the library and do a little bit of studying?
Yo! Pierre! Mic drop! W in chat, everybody! Oh! Trudeau shouldn't even stand up after that. Speaker, sit down. The adults are talking.
Colleagues, I ask us to make sure that our comments are not disruptive to the House. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to play his partisan games and focus on me, we're going to remain focused on Canadians. We move forward with an Affordable Groceries and Affordable Housing Act that they have continued to obstruct debate on. We've continued to deliver things for Canadians like dental care for low-income Canadians that they stood against. We continue to deliver $10 a day child care in places across the country that they campaigned against. They continue to campaign against the Canada Child Benefit. We see, Mr. Speaker, they're always there to make clever political arguments. They're actually support Canadians like we are.
Good news headline. Apartment rents are on the verge of declining due to massive new supply. Unfortunately, that's a CNBC headline from the United States of America. Here's a CBC headline in Canada. Rent is going up more than $100 a month right now.
Yeah.
Another one, the Prime Minister's favorite, the Toronto Star, that this year we're having worse construction numbers than during the lockdown. Why is construction up and rent down south of the border when it's just the opposite here in Canada?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, we know we need to build more rental constructions more quickly, and that's why we put forward a bill that removes the GST from new rental constructions across the country and on the federal side, and that is actually spurring thousands of new units to be built across the country. It's a very exciting measure, except unfortunately, Conservatives have chosen to obstruct debate on that particular measure. Why won't they line up with Canadians? Why don't they see that building housing supply is going to help Canadians right across the country? Why won't they line up with us and support Canadians across the country?
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's the one that's been obstructing that promise for the last 8 years since he made it. But since that 8-year period, the average rent has doubled. Mortgage payments have doubled. The needed down payment has doubled. It has been double trouble. And after doubling the cost, he created a $4 billion so-called accelerator to build homes. How many homes have been completed?
Like a few hundred at most.
Chers collègues, s'il vous plaît.
The adults are talking, House Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, following a request from the Minister of Housing to scale up their ambition, Vaughan's City Council passed a bold housing resolution to unlock even more affordable family-sized homes. That is a direct result of the Housing Accelerator Fund. This is a concrete example of how the federal government can lead and ensure more affordable housing options so our seniors, students, families can grow in their communities. We look forward to more municipalities joining us to ensure all Canadians have a safe and affordable place to call home.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the question was not how many resolutions have been passed. You can't live in a resolution. You can't live in a photo op. You can't live in a press release or a promise. He created this fund a year and a half ago, promising to, quote, accelerate housing. So how many houses have been completed? And by completed, I mean houses with walls and roofs and doors and people living in them. How many are completed? How many?
Yeah, not just investment builds. Like how many people are living in these houses?
Très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition's housing plan consists of wagging a finger at municipalities and saying, you better build more homes or else. Mr. Speaker, we have a better approach than that. We actually work with municipalities to build more homes, and we're seeing the results of that housing plan. Recently, alongside British Columbia and the City of Vancouver, the member for Vancouver Centre announced the groundbreaking of the construction of 154 new affordable housing units close to transit in the heart of Davie Village, which will also house Community, which is a non-profit organization providing safe and secure services for individuals and families living with HIV/AIDS.
Wait, what?
Chef de l'opposition.
Cannot live in an announcement. You can't live in a press release. You can't live in the Prime Minister's talking points, which he's having so much trouble reading, Mr. Speaker.
Whoa!
The Prime Minister is now presiding over a massive decline in home building. In fact, last year, Canada built fewer homes than in 1972, and this year, housing starts are down 32%. And by the way, to end the suspense, the number of homes that have actually been built by this so-called housing accelerator, zero. What? Nada. Nothing. When will you stop the talk, end the bureaucracy, and finally get something built?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, over the past number of years, over 2 million families have got into homes because of our strategic investments in housing, and we just added to that with the Housing Accelerator Fund that is moving forward to remove barriers and get more housing built faster, which is exactly what we're doing, for example, with the City of London, where Mayor Morgan said this is the most significant housing investment in London history, where over the next 3 years alone, we'll build over 2,000 additional housing units in London. We know this is a challenge that we need to solve together, and that is what we're going to do in partnership with municipalities.
8 years ago, the Prime Minister promised in his 2015 platform that he would, and I quote, repurpose all available federal lands and buildings at a low cost for affordable housing in communities where there is a pressing need.
He hasn't done it at all.
How many homes have resulted from repurposing these buildings and lands?
Good question.
Not a single one.
Mr. Speaker, in 2017, we moved forward with the National Housing Strategy, which was a direct response to the fact that for 10 years under the Conservatives, the federal government had removed itself from providing housing solutions for Canadians. Over the following years, around 2 million Canadians accessed new homes, new places to live because of the work of that National Housing Strategy, and we're continuing that work, working closely in partnership with municipalities and provinces, doing things like eliminating the GST on rental construction of new apartment buildings. These are things
that still doesn't regulate rent.
Accelerated if the Conservatives stop blocking them in this House.
Short answer, he hasn't done shit.
We're happy to cooperate. We're just looking for one little detail. There's 37,000 federal buildings representing 6.2 million square meters of space. The Prime Minister promised 8 years ago that he would repurpose some of that space to create homes. How many have been created?
Excellent. Very good talking points. Right to the bread and butter.
Like I said, Mr. Speaker, our national housing strategy has delivered homes has supported in delivering the homes for close to 2 million Canadians. Families, but we're going to continue to do the work necessary, working with partners in municipalities and provinces on delivering housing solutions. One of those
He's caught in his lie.
is eliminating the GST on new rental construction, and that's something, unfortunately, that the Conservatives could support with right now if they stopped obstructing and slowing down debate on the bill that we put forward for.
That doesn't help with rent control.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there seems to be a problem with the microphone. The Prime Minister
translation.
Question. There are 37,000 federal buildings, 6 million plus square meters that could be converted into housing, not to mention thousands of acres of federal land. Now, the Prime Minister agreed that that could be done because he promised it 8 years ago. So after 8 years of doubling housing costs, can he tell us how many homes have been created by repurposing federal buildings and lands? Just the number, please.
Not a single one. And watch the 30-second beating around the bush.
Over the past years, we've invested close to $40 billion to build and renovate close to 500,000 homes. That's 500,000 homes.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister doesn't need to answer it because my deputy leader did an order paper question. He asked for the government to tell us how many homes have resulted from repurposing land and buildings of the federal government. The number? 13. Oh! Not 1,300, not 13,000.
13 homes.
Mr. Speaker, that's 2 homes per year. How many millennia would it take then to build the 3.5 million homes we need for Canadians?
Oh my God! L in the chat for Trudeau.
Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker,
Oh.
the Leader of the Opposition continues to play rhetorical games. We're focused on
13.
a range of solutions
13, folks.
we need to actually solve for this housing crisis, which involves things like removing GST from purpose-built rental construction, moving forward with the rental construction financing initiative that we've been working on for a number of years now and delivering, moving forward the Housing Accelerator Fund, $4 billion for municipalities like Vaughan, like London, like the Lower Mainland
Good.
homes, and continuing to work on making the rental market safer for all Canadians. These are things we will continue to do because Canadians are counting on all of us.
No, you got caught in your lie, buddy.
After 8 years, 8 long years, 8 miserable years, Mr. Speaker, of this Prime Minister, he is not worth the cost of energy. 2,800 Nova Scotians have had their power cut off. And this day, the Nova Scotia government reported that 37% of Nova Scotians now live in energy poverty. Because of this Prime Minister's carbon tax, which he now wants to quadruple up to 61 cents a litre, will he at least let his Atlantic caucus have a free vote on our motion to axe the tax to bring home lower prices?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, what the Conservative Party refuses to understand is our plan to fight climate change is above and before everything else a plan on affordability. 8 out of 10 Canadians do better off with this price on pollution in the jurisdictions where it's been brought in. This is something that means that even as we fight climate change, which is something Atlantic Canadians know all too well is important with hurricanes like Fiona or the wildfires we saw this summer, we're putting more money back in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians. This is how we fight climate change and support Canadians at the same time when Conservatives want to take away checks like the Climate Action Incentive.
Bro, 13 houses.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
What a friggin' failure.
Years, 8 long, painful, costly years. This carbon tax is not worth the cost. And it's not just me saying it. The Liberal member for Avalon has said, and I quote, "We are punishing rural areas of our country and the most vulnerable people in society." End quote. other Liberal MPs like to go back to Atlantic Canada and say they disagree with the Prime Minister's plan to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. Unfortunately, they lose their spines when they get to the House of Commons. So will he stop bullying them, let them have a free vote, so that we can pass our motion to axe the tax and bring home lower prices?
Oh my God, chill, Pierre, chill.
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, apparently unlike the Leader of the Opposition, I spent a lot of time with rural Canadians this summer who were heartbroken.
How? He was at his cottage.
Communities, the record floods, the record heat waves and droughts that everyone is...
Not a single person believes him, eh? That's so funny.
Rick?
You're such a lying weasel.
Hiding in your cottage doesn't count.
Hiding in your cottage doesn't count. I called it. Did you hear that? Did everyone hear that?
Prime Minister, you have 17 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, in all the conversations I had with rural Canadians across the country this summer, they were devastated by the impacts of record wildfires, of floods, of droughts, of heat waves.
Oh shit, that's funny. That's
change.
funny, man.
Do we need to continue to fight climate change while putting money back in their pockets? That's exactly what our price on pollution does. That's what we're going to continue to do instead of eliminating.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Oh my God.
Mr. Speaker, hiding out and going surfing in Tofino does not count for spending time with rural Canadians.
There it is.
And obviously he's not listening to what they have to say, because after 8 years, his carbon tax is not worth the cost. He now wants to quadruple the tax to 61 cents a litre. Even the Liberal government in Newfoundland and Labrador is calling on him to axe the tax. They agree with me. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister listen to the Liberal government in Newfoundland and Labrador and his own Liberal caucus from Atlantic Canada and axe the tax?
Oh my God.
Prime Minister responds, I would like to inform colleagues that in the week following the parliamentary break, the speakers will be issuing some reflective guidelines as to the type of things that we should mention and not mention.
Bro,
that will not
sit down. The adults are talking.
Members all know that. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I suggest that the Leader of the Opposition speak to people in Stephenville, Newfoundland, who've seen historic investments, looking at them from Germany because of the investments in hydrogen in the clean economy and offshore wind. I suggest he speaks to his member from St. Thomas, Ontario, where the Volkswagen plan is going to land because of the historic leadership we've shown in clean electricity and drawing in innovation investments. Mr. Speaker, you haven't heard the Leader of the official opposition talk at all about...
Hey, yo, it's called him the Prime Minister.
Because he has no plan for the future of the economy.
Trudeau's so nervous. He's done.
When you tax the fuel of the farmers who make the food and the truckers who ship the food, then you tax all who buy the food. And after 8 years, this Prime Minister's carbon tax is just not worth the cost. But he hasn't got the memo. Now he wants to quadruple the tax to 61 cents a litre with firm support from the NDP. Both parties motivated by greed, government greed, to take more and more money away from poor and working class families who are hit hardest by this tax. Will they stop the greed? Vote with us today to axe the tax so that we can bring home lower prices.
There you go, Pierre.
Mr. Speaker, what the Honourable Leader of the Opposition refuses to understand is you cannot have a plan for the future of the economy and jobs in this country if you don't also have a plan for
climate change.
To fight climate change. That is what we have demonstrated over the colleagues in the G7 as we continue to move
I don't know what just happened there.
in a way that both delivers affordability for families and jobs for the coming generations. These are the things that Canadians need for the future. That is what our plan is delivering.
But no one can live in the present, so this is very bizarre thinking.
No, what they need is affordable food.
Yes.
And energy.
Yes.
A policy that lowers emissions like we did rather than raising taxes like he does. Actually, emissions are up. That is the great irony. Emissions are rising under this Prime Minister, which proves that he and his carbon tax are not worth the cost. After
Wow.
8 years, can he not
I didn't know emissions were
pain
rising.
and suffering in the many, many streets of people who are lined up to go into food banks because of his tax? Will he do the honorable and compassionate thing and vote with us today to axe the tax?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, what the Honourable Leader of the Opposition continues to put forward is a plan to double down on oil and gas at a time where that is not going to build the careers, the future, the innovation that Canadians need. I was pleased to meet with a number of Albertan business leaders last night to talk about how we're going to work with them, including in the oil and gas industry, to reduce emissions, to build a brighter future that includes great jobs for Albertans and workers in the energy sector right across the country. We have a plan to fight climate change and grow the economy for the future. The Conservative Party has none.
Bro, no one can afford anything. What part of that is he not understanding?
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
La seule chose qu'il a, c'est une taxe.
The only thing the Prime Minister has is a second carbon tax that will apply to Quebec. With the support of the Bloc Québécois, which is joining with the federal government at a time when the leader of the Bloc Québécois is actually vacationing, using up more fuel in a jet. Will the Prime Minister and his friend, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, will they cancel their holiday plans and the carbon tax to protect the environment and Quebecers' wallets?
Le très honorable.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are discussing issues today that are serious for Canadians, like their futures and jobs. Whereas the leader of the Conservative Party is continuing with his partisan attacks.
Oh, cry, cry, cry. Just a reminder, everyone, to drop a like on the video if you haven't yet already.
Colleagues, le décorum est vraiment important.
Decorum is very important in this House.
Oh, they
That
cut the
is
feed.
why I must insist that only one person rises and speaks at a time. We must respect that rule. And we must behave in a way that is worthy of this chamber. The Right Honourable Prime Minister, please start over. Mr. Speaker, we will always be there to support Canadians. We will always be there to work closely with all those who want to build a strong economy and protect Canadians' future. That is what people want from us, and that's what we are doing. We take it very seriously, whereas some people in this House do not take it seriously and prefer personal attacks over substantive debate, rather. Canadians will have to judge, but I will continue to work closely with the NDP, the Black
Yeah, you will.
Party, to build a stronger future for all Canadians, despite the Conservatives' partisan games.